Buying a car is a big purchase, and if you get it wrong, it can cost you a lot more than it needs to. So I wanted to talk about how to buy a car the smart way. Essentially, there are three options that you should think about when you're buying a car. The first is that you can buy a car with savings. Pretty standard, I suppose. You save up money in the bank, you use your savings, you go fund the car. Big advantage of doing this is that once you own the car, you don't have any debt repayments, lease repayments, and the cash flow is obviously a lot less. The downside though is that you need to save up the cash in the first place, which means it can take some time. The second is that you fund it by debt. Now stay tuned for part 2 of this video where I'm going to go through the different debt options and unpack some of the advantages, the things to look out for there. But you can fund the car with debt. That means that you're going to then have to make some car repayments or pay some interest costs on your debt, but it obviously allows you to buy the car a lot faster. And depending on how it's structured from a tax perspective and whether you can claim deductions for your motor vehicle, then it can create some more tax deductions for you as well. The third option is using a lease structure. Now that can be particularly helpful if you work for someone that allows you to salary package, because it can increase the deductibility of a car. And I'm going to come back to deductibility in a sec, but essentially with a lease, you've got no upfront payments and then a regular monthly payment. It also covers all of your servicing costs and maintenance costs for the vehicle, all of the ongoing costs, which can be quite helpful when it comes to your budgeting, because you put the money in every pay or every month or whatever the lease payment is, but then you've got money sitting there in a pool when expenses come up. One of the big drivers of which of those three options that I mentioned is going to be the best one for you is what the level of deductibility is on your car purchase. So if you're working in a role that requires you to drive for your work, then that's going to open itself up to being tax deductible. And then it can make quite a big difference between whether you buy from your savings, whether you fund through debt, or whether you use a lease. If you're not able to claim any tax deductions for your vehicle, then it changes the game slightly. In that case, and I'd encourage you to run your own numbers on this, and this is not financial advice, but generally if you can fund a motor vehicle from savings, you're going to end up paying a lot less for the vehicle over time, because the interest rate that you get on a savings account is going to be lower than the interest that you would pay on any debt. And in some cases, it can be a lot lower than the interest charge on some of the personal loan repayment. If you're choosing between a debt or lease though, because you don't have savings, if you can do salary packaging with the lease, particularly if the car is not required for work-related purposes, then it can be advantageous from a tax perspective to structure things in that way. Oftentimes when we compare the two, the lease option will come out in front, but I'd encourage you to compare that for yourself. Now stay tuned for part 2 where I'm going to unpack the different debt options that you can use to buy a car the smart way.